So I've been for the fair tax since long before there was a name for it. I couldn't find anybody that even knew anything about it. I would go to my round table at the restaurant at 6 o'clock in the morning in my little town of 270 people, sit down with the brains around there. I call them the Oshkosh Bagosh Caucus in their overalls. And I would talk this through with them. And finally they got tired of hearing about it. And they said, well, if it was such a good idea, we'd have done it already. Not this government. We leave a lot of good ideas on the table. The fair tax is one of them. And the best thing about it, all the good things that I can tell you, the best thing about it is, first, we need to build a nation of constitutional conservatives that are fiscally responsible. That's our charge. And this is a real story about a young little fella that was 8 years old at the time named Michael Dix. And his father was actually running for Congress, and little Michael walked in and he'd been saving up his money to buy his box of Skittles. It was 89 cents as the price on the box of Skittles. And so little Michael Dix got his box of Skittles off of there, and he's making one of those first purchases of his little life. And he put the Skittles up on the counter in the convenience store, and he counted out the 89 cents. And the lady at the register rang it up, and she said, that'll be 96 cents, please. And he said, but it's 89 cents. 96 cents, you've got to pay the governor, you've got to pay your taxes on it. And he turned to his father and he said, Dad, I have to pay taxes on Skittles? Yes, son, you have to pay your share as this goes forward. And so his dad had to loan him the money for the taxes. Now that was an experience for little Michael Dix. He'll never forget it. I'll never let him forget it, actually. And so think of what happens if we go to a fair tax, a national sales tax, and you get 56% more in your paycheck, and whenever you buy something, you have to pay the tax, and every little kid growing up in America, millions of kids, putting actually billions of times a couple of dimes up on the counter for Uncle Sam, and they're reminded that the federal government costs too much, it does too much, it usurps your liberty, we need less of it. We will raise generations of conservatives. They will be elected to city councils and school boards and state legislatures and Congress, and we'll elect them to the White House one day, and we'll get our liberty back in part because constitutional conservatives will be elected to offices across the land, and they'll understand this responsibility. That's the biggest reason why I'm for the fair tax, but it also is what solves this dilemma that's ahead of us. And then I want to say just a few more things about Obamacare because I can't let go of it that easily. Reading that bill, there are other members that have read the whole bill. I read it to the point of revulsion. I couldn't stand it anymore. And then I began to fight it and stand and pound it. And I stood on the floor of the House, and I just found out last night that a flow chart, a color-coded flow chart, remember Hillary's care, was black and white. I had that flow chart laminated in my construction office back in '93, and looking at what that did to our freedom then scared the living daylights out of me. Well, the flow chart that came from Hillary, or from Obamacare, was produced by your good Congressman, Kevin Brady. And I listened to a speech by General Patriots here a few months ago, and he emphasized this. You have to be there first with the truth. That's what Kevin Brady did. He was there first with the truth that we could see how bad Obamacare was, and I could put it up on the floor of the House and get out my pointer and smack those horrible different titles that they create, including, let's see, what was that? The commissaritioner who would make all of the decisions on our health care, whether your policy could be legitimate or not, whether the government would approve it. In the end, it's this. They took away your right to buy a health insurance policy of your choice that's a product of demands in the marketplace. They took away your right to manage your life and manage your budget. They imposed the individual mandate that says that you have to give up a certain portion of your paycheck and buy an insurance policy that the government approves. Now, if you can have a paycheck that's whatever it might be, and they can take 15 or 20% of your paycheck and tell you, you shall spend this on a product that we approve. If they can usurp 20% of your paycheck, they can usurp 25. If they can take 25, they can take 50. If they can take 50, they can take 100. How in the world do you have any liberty left if the government ever tells you how you're going to spend your money for anything? So, Obamacare itself is one of the nationalizations that have been brought about by Barack Obama. Some of this started under the Bush administration, but Barack Obama accelerated this thing like a Keynesian economist on steroids. He nationalized 3 large investment banks, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, General Motors, and Chrysler. He took over the entire student loan program in the United States, and that wasn't enough. Then he nationalized your skin and everything inside it with Obamacare, and he put a 10% tax on the outside if you go to the tanning salon. That's what they did to our liberty. Obamacare is an unconstitutional taking of American liberty. It is unconstitutional. And it must go. And there are a number of ways that we can undo it. Yes, push the repeal. The House of Representatives had, in H.R. 2, it was the language that I introduced to repeal Obamacare, was voted on in the House. It was a bipartisan vote, and every Republican in the House of Representatives voted to repeal Obamacare. And one of those, of course, was Kevin Brady and Judge Poe, and every Republican you sent from Texas. They were all up front in the fight. Now, that bill to repeal failed in the Senate, but every Republican in the Senate voted to repeal Obamacare. And then we brought on Thursday, it was a language that I introduced to cut all funding to Obamacare. And that passed the House with every Republican vote on Thursday. Now, it's a harder thing in the Senate, we know. But I'm not satisfied to try to tell the American people that the House majority is a placeholder and you should send us a majority in the Senate and a new president in 2012, and we were good at holding our place until then. We got to have a fight now. We have to be willing to stare the president down and face him down in a showdown over a shutdown, or the president will get everything he's willing to fight for. I did a telephone town hall meeting a couple of nights ago, and I called thousands of households in my district, and they are randomly selected phone numbers, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. And so I asked, while we were listening to their talk, I asked a polling question. Do you believe that we should shut off all funding to Obamacare? 78% said yes, 22% said no.